Nancy Drew, Labyrinth of Lies is not a popular game, but I like it. Mostly I like the puzzles, mythology, and environment. The rest of the game is not so great, especially the museum stuff. The museum takes up a third of the game, and none of it is good times. It's like a boring knockoff of Secret of the Scarlet Hand, only with a third of the exhibits and none of the games. I would be very disappointed if I visited this museum in real life. The game starts with Nancy calling the Hardy Boys. Melina has asked Nancy to help with the opening of a new museum exhibit. The Hardys promise to have their contacts at the network look into things. The network is the new name for ATAC. I love the Joe conversation where Joe complains he hates the name change. What is he gonna do with all his ATAC t-shirts now? It's funnier when you consider ATAC's a secret organization, so they really shouldn't have t-shirts in the first place. Nancy rushes to the theater when she hears a woman screaming. It's Thanos and Xenia rehearsing for tonight's play. The play is about Persephone, who was kidnapped by Hades, ruler of the underworld. Xenia is the director. She's incredibly worried the play will be a failure. All of the characters in this game are wearing Greek god costumes. The costumes look great. I have a hard time imagining the characters wearing anything else. I guess Xenia is an okay character. She doesn't do much besides complain she's nervous, which is exactly what Niobe does for the entire game. I like Xenia's big scene at the end, but it doesn't quite make up for the fact that Xenia does nothing for the game most of the time. There's a book in the amphitheater. It lists famous people of ancient Greece. Where was this book during the statue puzzle in the second Nancy Drew Dossier game? When you enter the museum, you hear glass breaking. This is followed by a 15-second animation of Niobe walking across the room. 15 seconds seems excessively long. 5 seconds would have been fine. Nancy asks what's going on. Niobe says she was drawing on the glass display case. It broke when she put too much weight on it. Niobe gives you a book about the Greek gods. She hates having to be in the play. Tonight's performance terrifies her. She warns that their version has a frightening, unpredictable ending. Melina's door has a note for Nancy. It says the key to the office is by the Nike statue, and there are 3 chores to do. The second page is more intense. Melina says, "Museum pieces are missing! Dun dun dun." She's trying to track them down. The line at the post office must be super long, because she won't be back for the rest of the day. I didn't have fun with Melina's 3 chores. It feels like they were only included in this game as an obligation. Like the developers didn't want to have puzzles here, but they had to. So they were all, fine, we'll just copy-paste the sheep labeling puzzle from the last game. I didn't love the museum chores in Game 6, but at least they included fun things like silly phone calls and meeting Alejandro. I guess the vase labeling puzzle is educational, but it's boring. I always cheat. To solve it, you have to call the Hardy Boys and ask them to send you a book on vases. The Hardys tease they've got a big secret project coming up, something to do with business school. In real life, VentureBeat published an online article in 2014 saying Her Interactive started work on a Hardy Boys game. I think that's what this conversation is referring to. In Midnight in Salem, the Hardys say their big surprise is a detective business, which isn't as good as a Hardy Boys game, but it's a fine follow-up to this conversation. The book on vases arrives in the mailbox. I noticed this game just got started and Nancy already has 3 reference books. I don't think that's a good sign. This game leans heavily on research puzzles, when an earlier game in the series would have had a puzzle like find a way to put all the vases in the same box. Doing the temple images also requires research materials. There's a paper about Greek architecture. This is my favorite of Melina's 3 challenges. It's kind of fun. Making your own temple, sort of like one of those dress-up games, except instead of picking out the right clothes, you're picking building parts. There are 3 rounds, each one has 6 requirements. The final task is assigning tickets for the performance on Melina's computer. The computer is locked with a password. It is frustrating that Nancy can't call Melina and ask for the password. That's how it would work in real life. Nancy would call Melina and say, Hey, you told me I have to use your computer, but it's locked. What's the password? To get the computer password, Nancy needs to ask about the coin display. Because, of course, coins, computer password, those are obviously related. Melina says you can get the key by solving the animal puzzle in her office. She gives you an additional assignment, verifying the provenance of some artifacts. She needs Nancy to become an expert at this fast. But hey, no pressure. You can't call Melina unless you've entered her office first. Melina's conversations are pretty boring, except for one towards the end where she fires Nancy. She later admits the culprit forced her to say that, in a fairly weak attempt to scare Nancy off the case. Melina's office is small, but it almost has more things to look at than the actual museum does. With the animals puzzle, you match the animal to the correct symbol according to the Gods book. For example, the zoo section mentions an eagle and a thunderbolt, so the eagle goes in a thunderbolt spot. Solving the puzzle gives you the filing cabinet key. The left side has the computer password and the coin display key. The right side has labels for the vases and employee time cards. Melina's computer has 6 apps. One is Lottery, which is a memory game that I always ignore. I also ignore the Messenger app, where Melina sends you unimportant messages that you don't have to read. In previous games, Nancy got text messages. That was perfectly fine. I don't know why they replaced texting with this inconveniently located messenger. The Ticketer app is a straightforward logic puzzle. Assign 26 seats according to the rules. There are 4 sections, 4 aisle seats, and 7 handicap spots. If you get it correct, the tickets are printed out. Put them in the mailbox to complete the task. The Player app has audio clips of the actors rehearsing the play. That could have been interesting, but it's not. Xenia's script is bad. You can tell her main concern is impressing people with how clever she is. Other than that, the audio is mostly weird stuff, like Gregor doing a cowboy voice. I lose interest after the second or third clip. The worst part is that the rehearsal goes on for a full 38 minutes. No joke. It takes less time to beat the entire game than it does to listen to the rehearsal. Why did they put so much time and effort into this? I sincerely hope these recordings are the result of a fun afternoon of improv, and it's not the case they worked more on this part than the rest of the game's script. Researching provenance is a boring puzzle. You have to use many records in Melina's office to fill out forms. She's got 3 binders, a clipboard, the employee time cards, maybe something else. It's too much research for me. For each item, you need the picture, the date, type, employee, owner, exhibit, and return date. It feels like a trip to the DMV. I'm just filling out forms, and there are 3 rounds to this puzzle. The computer says there's a problem with the vase. There's a time gap where it might have been replaced with a fake. That is big news, which Nancy ignores. I don't know why. She should tell Melina about the authentication problem right away. The game forces you to wait a fair amount of time before Melina asks you to continue checking provenance. That's all the museum stuff at the start of the game. In the theater area, the main thing you can do is meet Gregor, the handsome and charming one, who quickly asks Nancy to be more than friends. When she says no, Gregor reassures himself Nancy has a boyfriend. He's just as attractive as ever. This is supposed to be a joke, but a lot of people think it's a terrible way to introduce Gregor. Thankfully, it's the only time he tries to flirt with Nancy. I guess Gregor is my favorite character of the game because he's the funny one, and all the other characters are pretty weak. Gregor stands out as the best in comparison. Gregor warns you not to mess with the fly system because it'll kill you. He must not know Nancy very well if he thinks that is gonna stop her. Nancy touches the fly system and instantly something breaks. A stressed out Xenia goes to see what's wrong, and she starts yelling, even though nobody else is there. Now that Xenia's gone, you can snoop through her desk. There's a tablet with 7 jigsaw puzzles. I never do them. There are publicity posters for all the actors. It's awkward because Thanos and Niobe don't have any acting experience. Just leave that information off of the poster, jeez. Nancy steals Xenia's copy of the script, which is terribly rude. Xenia is for sure going to need that script today. Xenia left handwritten notes on the script. The first one gives the code for the lift control. The second note has the correct weights for the fly system. Next time you talk to Gregor, he orders you to fix it. He says check his tablet for instructions, which is a little inaccurate. All the tablet says is check Xenia's script notes. The fly system puzzle's okay. You have to cross-reference Xenia's notes with the architecture paper to figure out what the 6 categories are. From there, you figure out how much each one weighs. Distributing the weights is a simple enough part of the puzzle. Xenia's third note says the password for Gregor's tablet is first, last, repeat. She means letters. Select the first letter, then the last letter, first letter, then the last letter. Continue until you get the full password, which is paleontology. This feels like a reference to something that I'm not getting, like they were planning to make a Nancy Drew dinosaur game someday. Gregor's tablet has the same layout as Melina's messenger. I don't know why it has a separate stage cues section, when everything in that section is irrelevant and can be ignored. Nancy talks when you read the entries, which are important. Something about Gregor's tablet bugs me. My cynical side says the tablet only exists to stop players from beating the game too quickly. There are 4 different puzzles which are locked by the tablet. You can find the puzzles, but Nancy won't try to solve them unless she's read their respective tablet notes. That's frustrating, and I feel bad for anyone who gets stuck on this game because they can't figure out how to make the correct tablet notes appear. That has happened to me. The triggers aren't obvious. For example, to trigger the note about Xenia's puzzle box, you have to look at the famous Greeks puzzle. I don't know why that is. It would make more sense if looking at the Greeks puzzle triggered the Greeks puzzle clue. But no, that one is triggered by solving the hands puzzle and the Plutus conversation. I think the note about Plutus is there when you start the game. Gregor says he hid the casting sheet in his bag behind the red stitching. Gregor's sure no one will know what it really means. I guess he's right because when Nancy looks at the sheet, she fails to notice the monologues are named after artifacts in the museums. 7 coins, green jewel. Gregor's not bothering to be subtle about this, is he? Go down the stairs past Gregor. Use the code from Xenia's script to open up the panel to get the lift remote. Use it in the middle of the stage. Nancy travels to the underground set. Thanos jumps out and says, "Who would dare to enter my kingdom?" Then chuckles evilly. Nancy accuses him of trying to scare her, and he leaves. The conversation's weird, because Thanos is talking in metaphors, and he's acting in character as Hades. It's like he's trying to be confusing. The dialogue in this game isn't great, maybe because the majority of the writing is that 38-minute script. Nevertheless, the writing in this game is a noticeable improvement over the previous one. Nancy sees the ferryman needs a coin. That lets her get a coin from the museum's display case. I've seen a lot of complaints about this. Nancy robs the museum in order to pay a person who's not real. There is a message on the computer saying the coin's a fake replica, not a real artifact. Still, Nancy robbed the museum without permission. How is she not as bad as the museum robbing culprits? The ferryman takes Nancy across the River of Death, and this is the part of the game that I really love. I know it sounds mean to say, I love the part without the characters or mystery, but it is so awesome. This is a great recreation of the Greek underworld. All 4 of the sets look good, and they have the best puzzles of the game. The puzzles are creatively themed off Greek mythology. Unlike those museum puzzles, it feels like they wanted to make these puzzles. While it's my favorite part of the game, lots of people hate it. This set would never exist in real life. That coin-operated ferryman alone would be too expensive. A play would not use real fire in the throne room. Talk about a safety hazard. How do the actors move between sets when every door is locked with a puzzle? Imagine if Thanos got stuck on the pomegranate puzzle. The entire play would be put on hold for 10 minutes while he figured out the solution. It's dumb for them to store the sets underground, where the audience can't see them. The game justifies it by saying the museum was given a free hydraulic system which rotates and raises the sets. That's a little hard to believe. And these sets don't match that 38-page script. Those are the major complaints people give about the underworld areas. I don't care. I like this area, and I think it looks great. I wish there were games that did just as good a job recreating other fantasy worlds, like Alice in Wonderland. After you cross the river, there's a 3-part puzzle with the 3-headed dog. You have to block off lines on a map, so the dog token can't move to the star tokens. The dog moves every time you block a path. This puzzle is sort of like Fox and Geese, only it's not awful. It's fun figuring out this puzzle. The next area has stuff you can't do yet. Before entering the 3rd area, there's a scene of Niobe and Xenia arguing. Xenia criticizes Niobe's acting skills, and Niobe begs to be taken out of the play. This scene's okay. The game would be just fine without it. I think it's weird these games have a skip dialogue button, yet there are scenes like this one where the dialogue cannot be skipped. The 3rd area has a paper with instructions for the art studio alarm system. You want to climb up the rocks? There is a death scene where you have to back away in order to avoid being crushed by a rock. They had the exact same death scene in the last game. Past the rocks is a pitcher. You want to use the pitcher on the fountain to fill up the nearby tub. This puzzle probably makes no sense to people who don't know the myth behind the puzzle. It is described in an optional book on myths in the area past Gregor. What do you know? Another reference book. The pitcher has holes. There's a puzzle to close them. Use the arrows to move the green, yellow, and silver plates. I'm sure there's some kind of logic to how the arrows affect the plates, but I've never figured it out. Guessing randomly works well enough as a puzzle solution. Filling the tub with water unlocks the door to the next room. You can't do anything there. All you can do is die in the fire. The door to the 3rd area is locked with a hand puzzle. You want to combine hands on a hexagon grid so they all land in the center tile. This is another good puzzle that I like. There are 3 rounds. The art studio's in the 2nd area. The instructions say you have to make a continuous line which goes through every dot. You have to follow with fingerprint smudges too. This is also a good puzzle. Like I said, exploring the sets is my favorite part of the game. All 4 sets have a plaque with a partial alphabet. After you see one plaque, you can get paper from Melina's printer and charcoal from the art studio. Use them to make tracings on all 4 plaques to get a complete Greek alphabet. The art studio has a letter from Melina to Niobe. Niobe's making props for the play, which look like museum artifacts. Again, that's something which isn't in the 38-minute script. There are very strict rules about what Niobe can do, such as you can't make any sphinxes. More importantly, the paper has notes on how to open the secret door. The next time you use the lift, Thanos steals the remote from Nancy, saying the hydraulics are too dangerous. She's not allowed here. Why didn't he say that the first time he saw her here? The next time you leave Melina's office, you see Niobe use the secret passage to the art studio. This is a puzzle I don't like much. Rotate the 2 rings so only lightning bolts show. That door opens. To open the door from the other side, you follow the instructions on Niobe's paper. I like this door puzzle better. You need to enter the names of the cast members in Greek in alphabetical order. You have to get a complete Greek alphabet before you can solve the puzzle. The passage leads to the art studio. Niobe wears a totally different outfit in the art studio. I have no idea how she changed clothes so quickly. Niobe encourages you to make a vase, which is kind of fun. You get to have your own design and stickers. Niobe puts it inside the kiln for you. Several minutes later, the vase is completed. Nancy sees a sphinx inside the kiln. That was on the list of banned props. Nancy confronts Niobe, who's angry. Niobe asks, "Who gave you permission to be here?" Again, if Nancy's not allowed in the art studio, why didn't Niobe say that the first time she saw Nancy here? If you don't want to bother with the secret tunnel, you can get the lift remote back. Go to the lift and open the container for a puzzle. You click to make wires appear between the various knobs. A knob turns green if it has the correct number of wires touching it. It's a variation of the fans puzzle from Trail of the Twister, only there are no diagonal wires. I think it's a good puzzle. Solving it gives you the lift remote. Thanos appears in the lift area after this. It's a little weird that Nancy can't have conversations with Thanos until the second half of the game, like he's not an important character. He doesn't bother confiscating the lift remote a second time. When you do everything in the sets, Gregor should have new notes on his tablet. One says Thanos is connected to the Greek mafia. You can call the Hardy Boys, who confirm that's true. It's so dramatic. I wonder why this storyline is optional. Another note says Xenia locked something in the box on her table. I think Nancy should be able to find this puzzle box on her own. It's not like Xenia made any attempt to hide it. It's a good puzzle, sort of like Renegrams, but with letters. Nancy has to put the letters on the board. Consecutive letters have to touch. The clues on the side are helpful, but not too helpful. They say two letters that go in a particular row, but not where they appear in the row. The way the board's laid out, some of the letters don't have any clues, making it harder to place them. Good puzzle! It gives us some of Xenia's notes, mostly her complaints about the lift, and insisting her chorus joke in the audio files is funny. The important note is the code for the jail cell on the third set. Gregor has a tablet note for the famous Greeks puzzle, which is outside the art studio. You have to slide pieces around the grid to match Gregor's instructions. I think this puzzle is disliked by most people, because it's complicated. You have to use your book to match each letter to a picture. For example, A for Archimedes matches the picture of the Archimedes screw. The puzzle would still be tough if you had an easier matching challenge, like matching the uppercase letters to the lowercase letters. Slide each uppercase letter to a spot that's the same color and has a blue circle. Slide each picture to a spot that's the same color as its partner. You have to think many steps ahead for this. It's one of the toughest puzzles of the game. Solving the puzzle gives you a paper for a Roman gods puzzle. Why are the Roman gods in a Greek mythology game? Get those posers out of here. You also get a stamp, which is ideal for forging invoices from a shipping company. It perfectly matches the invoice on the crate in the museum. Really, this clue should solve the mystery. Gregor messed with the shipment. Case closed. Another Gregor tablet note is about the gemstones in the jewelry display. It's a double slider puzzle with a 3x3 grid on the left and right. Move the pieces around so when you shut the box, there are 7 gems in each square. I like this puzzle. It's nice to have a slider puzzle with over 100,000 solutions. The jewelry gives you a piece for the plant puzzle, which is on the third set. You have to place the 9 pieces on the board so every plant is complete. Right-click to rotate the pieces. I feel bad that I usually struggle with this puzzle because it doesn't seem like it should be tough. The puzzle gives you a key for the poster box outside the museum. The last page of Xenia's script says Thanos left a message for the VIPs behind the poster. I suspect they put a clue on the very last page just to make sure players go through the entire script. The backside of the poster has suspicious instructions on it. Once you've found enough evidence, Nancy calls Melina and says she suspects the actors are swapping props with real artifacts. Melina calls the police, and the culprits are arrested. Haha, just kidding. Melina asks you to solve part 2 of the provenance puzzle. She gives you the computer password. The computer says how to authenticate different types of artifacts. Here is the weird thing. Melina tells Nancy, test the vase and the jewelry. Nancy's task list says, test the emerald earrings and the gold chain necklace. That is not the vase and jewelry. Why does the task list disagree with Melina on this point? What reason do we have for suspecting those 2 items are the fakes? I'm sure somebody got stuck at this part of the game because they made the mistake of trying to follow Melina's orders instead of the task list's orders. Seriously, it makes no sense that Melina says check the vase when Nancy can't do that for a while yet. It would have been more accurate if Melina had said, I need you to check the vase, but not yet. First, check the earrings and jewelry, confront Niobe, talk to Xenia, do the light cues puzzle, see Gregor, then check the vase. I should note the last hour of the game is completely linear. You have to do everything in the specific order I just said. The only choice you have is whether to check the earrings first or the necklace first. Get a pottery shard from the art studio, use it on the necklace to see it's fake. Use a spectroscope on the earrings to see they're fake. The spectroscope is on the ground by the lift. I have no idea why a spectroscope is here. I highly doubt Thanos was carrying one in his pocket. So, Nancy officially proves 2 items are fake. Again, this would be a great place to call the police and end things. The game makes you jump through a few more hoops before you get to the ending segment. Just like Gregor's tablet entries, I don't understand the logic behind why you do things in this particular order. The light cues puzzle is the requirement that feels most out of place. Why put the light cues in this part of the game? It has nothing to do with what's going on. After finding the 2 fakes, Nancy accuses Niobe of counterfeiting. Niobe lies and says she's making copies for her own personal use. Niobe tells the sob story of how she was exiled from the art world after a friend took credit for 3 of her paintings. Niobe has now lost her sense of artistic purpose. She's convinced herself that she's not an original, she's just a mimic who copies the work of others. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this is a metaphor for the Nancy Drew series. Is it possible to make a new Nancy Drew mystery without being a mimic? Can the creators truly feed their artistic souls when they're duplicating someone else's style and their work is endlessly compared to what came before? I'm sure Her Interactive got tired of hearing fans complain that they don't like the new Nancy Drew games, they just want games in the style of the first 14 games. The conversation ends with Niobe saying Nancy must keep the forgeries a secret, only tell her closest friends. Nancy asks why. Niobe says, "No one else." Then Niobe disappears. That certainly is an abrupt ending to the conversation. It feels like the conversation was cut off halfway through. Accusing Niobe makes Xenia appear, for some reason. Xenia has a new outfit, which looks cool. I don't know the reason behind the sudden costume change, but I like it. If you tell Xenia about the forgeries, she is furious and demands to have Melina's phone number. Why doesn't she already have that? Xenia is so angry, and this conversation goes on for so long, it's obvious that Xenia is one of the culprits. If she was innocent, she would not be that concerned about covering up the crime. Xenia makes you do the light cues puzzle. Match light cues notes with the script and the on-screen instructions. Xenia's script notes are pretty thorough, which makes this puzzle easy enough to solve, but I rarely try to solve it on my own. I just copy the solution from my notes. When you solve the puzzle, the game says to reset the breaker box where you first found the lift remote. When you do this, Nancy sees Gregor switching the real vase with a fake. Now Nancy can finally check the provenance of the vase, like Melina told her to 15 minutes ago. The authentication database says you need a black light for this. Grab a hex key from the art studio. You can't get the hex key unless you've seen Gregor move vases. Use it on a light near the 3-headed dog. Use the light on the vase to see it's a fake. Now Nancy can confront Gregor. If you try to confront him earlier, he gives you a sob story that he's a poor orphan who took up acting because he didn't know how to be comfortable with his own self and personality. The list of names is a group of angel investors for his orphanage theater. Maybe this is a metaphor for the Nancy Drew series. The company only made one more game after this. They certainly could have used angel investors to keep the series afloat. This time, Nancy says Gregor's replacing artifacts with fakes and selling the authentic pieces to the people on the Plutus casting list. Gregor says Nancy just signed her own death warrant. Thanos is sure to come after her now. Thanos is watching, always watching. So, how did Thanos know Nancy solved the mystery? Did Xenia tell him? I bet it was Xenia. That makes more sense than Gregor's claim Thanos is somehow spying on them at every moment. This is another place where players get stuck, because you've done everything on your task list, and the next step is not obvious. You have to go to the art studio through the secret passage. Going through the other way doesn't work. There's a scene where Thanos tells Niobe, "It's decided." Don't ask what's been decided since we never find out. Maybe it's just me, but I think Thanos' accent slips during this scene. He sounds especially British when he says, "You have forgotten who you are, the role you play." Niobe gets mad at Thanos and starts destroying the vases. Thanos suggests that if she doesn't stop, he will gladly kill her. Thanos goes away. Nancy asks Niobe what's happening. What are they planning? Niobe answers with a metaphor based on the play. Like Demeter, Niobe is unable to protect the young woman from the underworld. Like Persephone, Nancy's gone too deep. She won't be able to escape. This conversation makes me mad. It's like the last game, where nobody gives Nancy a straight answer about anything. Niobe confirms she's making forgeries because if she doesn't, Thanos will murder her. There's an abrupt shift in tone as Niobe happily claps her hands together and says she hid something for Nancy on stage. Oh, a surprise for me? You shouldn't have! Nancy finds a key in the flower. This is followed by an odd scene where Thanos slowly approaches Nancy. Nancy stumbles backwards in fear as she begs him to stay back! Since when is Nancy so easily frightened? The lift is partially open, which is weird. Xenia's notes say the lift never moves unless somebody's standing on it. I guess somebody started the lift, moved it down slightly, jumped out of the lift, and Nancy did not hear any of that during the 2 seconds it took for Nancy to find the key. Nancy is knocked out as she falls backwards into the lift. I am sure Thanos found it convenient. Nancy defeated herself instead of putting up a fight. When Nancy wakes up, she's locked in the cage on the third set. This makes no sense. The set is being used in the play. The audience will be able to see Nancy. Yes, the audience will probably think having someone locked up here is all just part of the play, but there is nothing to stop her from interrupting the play by shouting out all the details of their crimes. We'll later learn the play is going on right now. I guess Nancy was unconscious for several hours. Yikes. Even though the play has started, the actors have enough free time to casually stroll through the sets and interact with Nancy. Gregor is first to come by. He asks if Nancy's okay. Gregor claims he's not a bad guy, but he's too afraid of Thanos to help Nancy out of the cage. The most he can do is hide a note for her in the boatman's hand. Niobe's key opens up the panel in the cage. It's almost a good thing Nancy was captured, because otherwise this key would have been useless to her. The panel has a spider puzzle. You have to move the rows of blocks left and right, so there are 9 squares in the yellow area, 7 squares in the green area, and no squares in the middle column. It's a good puzzle. Pull the red lever when you're done, and the cage opens. Nancy goes to the boatman. A paper here explains the gods puzzle on the boatman's staff. You want to move the 21 tiles left and right, so you get the correct 7 gods. The order is on the note you got for solving the famous Greeks puzzle. I don't know why the puzzle uses the Roman names of the gods. It would have been just fine with the Greek names. It would have been more appropriate to have the Greek names. Maybe they thought it would be confusing to have the Greek names, since 4 of them start with the letter A. Well, 3 of the Roman names start with the letter M. It's not a whole lot better. I don't like this puzzle because it's too difficult. It's impossible to know where you've made a mistake. It'd be better if every time you completed a god, it locked into place. I think the puzzle would also be improved if each god was made up of 2 tiles, not 3. When you solve the puzzle, you get Gregor's notes on the pomegranate puzzle and the weighing puzzle. More puzzles. Thanks a lot, Gregor. That will really help Nancy escape from death. The next trigger isn't obvious. You need to visit the throne room set, then turn around. There's no real reason to visit the throne room at this point, so I imagine people got stuck here. When you do it, Thanos appears in the cage area. Quickly enter the cage code on the keypad. Thanos is trapped inside. This is a fun little scene, even if it's weird. Thanos starts talking in metaphors about the underworld, which ends with him barking like a 3-headed dog. The whole time, Nancy keeps reminding him he's trapped in a cage. She doesn't care what he says, he can't do anything. Thanos is a little intimidating here, even though he's doing his best puppy dog impersonation. If he acts this well in the play, he'll do a great job as Hades. You need to leave the area and return to see Thanos has escaped. He left behind 8 stones for the judges. This is the same scales puzzle from game 26, only you're looking for a heavy piece, not a light piece. It's still an okay puzzle. Solving it gives you a map of the set. Nancy claims it shows how they're sneaking the art out during the production. I don't know what she's talking about, but whatever. One of the judge statues looks at you and drops a spear on your head. Nancy is knocked unconscious again. When Nancy wakes up, she's imprisoned on set again. There's an awesome scene where Xenia brags she's the mastermind of the whole operation. She's been manipulating everybody else the whole time. She's going to frame Gregor for the art theft and kill Nancy in her role as Persephone, Queen of Death. I like this scene, but it does feel like the game is purposely dragging out Nancy's escape. They could have rejiggered the order of events in this final segment so it feels more natural. As it is, Nancy's knocked out and forced to solve many puzzles to reach the judges area. Then she's knocked out and forced to solve many puzzles to reach the judges area again. I have seen some people complain they don't like how this is a mystery where everybody's the culprit. I think it's fine, because Niobe and Gregor are clearly the victims in this scheme. It's hard to think of them as guilty. First, Nancy has to undo the fetters on her feet. There are 5 rings. You have to spin them so they spell out 5-letter words. It's kind of tough because they're Greek words. She can go to a backstage area with a van for transporting the stolen art. I don't know why Nancy doesn't use this exit to leave the set. Just like Alec in The Silent Spy, Gregor has left behind a written confession that will automatically be sent to the police and reporters in the case of his death. The bridge controls are on a touchscreen next to a chair here. This is a good puzzle, but it's tough. You have to sort and rotate the blocks so they're in the right spots and facing the right directions. Lastly, Nancy has to take pomegranate seeds from the throne. She uses them on the puzzle by the door. I like this puzzle. It is more fun and challenging than the real final puzzle. The tiles indicate the colors of the neighboring tiles. For example, a corner piece has 3 pink circles on it. That means all 3 tiles connected to it are pink. Gregor's paper helpfully indicates that if all adjoining tiles share a hint color, then hey, that's the correct color. When you solve the puzzle, Nancy goes back to what she was doing before she was so rudely interrupted. Inside the judge's box are notes between Thanos and Xenia, along with a Wi-Fi device. If you try using the lift remote control, it's not working. You need to recharge it with the Wi-Fi device. This isn't a good puzzle. You have 5 moves in order to make over 100 connections. That is too many connections. You cannot plan the moves in advance. It forces players to guess randomly until they get it right. There is an announcement saying the intermission is over, please go back to your seats. Nancy's running out of time, so she goes to the lift and uses it. There is a scene where Nancy appears on stage. I like that we kind of get to see Nancy in the end of this game. I'm pretty sure it's Lily from game 26, only with different colored hair and clothes. Nancy announces there's a change of plans. Instead, she and the actors will tell the audience about the art heist. Xenia and Thanos run away, while Gregor declares the dark forces of the underworld will not prevail, to thunderous applause. Surprisingly, the play is a success. The audience loved how it ended with the entire cast being arrested. That sounds so interesting. It probably makes up for the first half of the play being terrible. Nancy explains that Xenia has a history of selling stolen art. That's how she met Thanos and planned the museum heist. The stuff with Melina was a red herring. They purposely sent her off on a wild goose chase. Maybe they should have picked a different distraction. One that's not practically the same as the crime they're trying to cover up. Thanos easily escapes from jail, while Gregor and Niobe get a chance to do some soul searching. The museum is a success, and Nancy finishes with a joke about stealing a valuable item, her boyfriend Ned. Real-life photos are shown during this part. I don't know why. So that's Labyrinth of Lies. As I've said, it has great puzzles and environment. The museum parts are boring. The story and dialogue need work. There are too many places where I don't understand the logic behind what you have to do next in order to progress with the game. It's especially bad when Melina tells you to check the vase when you have to do a series of entirely unrelated things first. My original score for this game was a generous 10 out of 10. My updated score is more accurate. It's a highly flawed game, but despite all my complaints, it is a game I enjoy. Consider it one of my unpopular personal favorites. I give Nancy Drew number 31, Labyrinth of Lies, a 6 out of 10.